Welcome back. Newly sworn-in FBI Director Kash Patel naming former Secret Service agent and NYPD officer Dan Bongino as his deputy director. Patel calling Bongino a cop's cop, saying his leadership and commitment to justice make him the right choice to help lead the FBI. President Trump also appointing Patel as the acting head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Joining me now is Fox News contributor and former FBI special agent Nicole Parker. Nicole, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. I want to get your take on these appointments. What do you think?
Wow, this is a very exciting time for the FBI. And, you know, Kash, I love that he is finally the permanent director of the FBI. They are craving true leadership over there. The organization has been flailing for far too long, and I am just very excited to see his solid leadership step in. I think that a lot of the agents, you know, there just hasn't been someone directing this ship. And when Ray came in, right off the heels of, Operation Crossfire Hurricane, the Russia collusion hoax, there wasn't a lot of accountability at the FBI. A lot of agents didn't feel that he really held many individuals accountable, and he had a chance to come in and really make changes at the Bureau, and we as agents really didn't see that. And so I think a lot of the solid, good agents are embracing the opportunity for Kash to come in and to set things right and to hold those accountable that have really derailed the organization. Those that are solid FBI agents, they embrace Kash and his arrival. Those that have derailed the agency are absolutely terrified. But I do think that there needs to be accountability and, tangible consequences. But at the same time, Kash is all about letting the good cops be good cops. And that is what the agency needs. Get back to fighting crime. And another thing I really love about his mission, transparency. Americans want to know what in the world is going on at the FBI. And he is saying we are going to have full transparency, because for far too long, people have said, ongoing investigation, we can't talk about that, or, we can't discuss that. Americans want to know what's happening at the FBI. Kash has promised that, and I think it's going to be a very good move for the agency.
Well, I mean, you lived it, and I lived it in a small sense during the whole Russia collusion lie that was made up, and, the FBI saw that there was no evidence of it, and yet they still tried to set up President Trump and Michael Flynn and so many others. Pam Bondi was sworn in as the 87th U.S. Attorney General earlier this month. And one of the key reasons and one of the key items on her agenda is to take politics out of the FBI. Walk us through what you experienced.
What I experienced was back in 2016 is really when I saw it happening. I was on the Violent Crime Fugitive Task Force. I came to the FBI as a result of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and I just really wanted to uphold the Constitution and help keep Americans safe. I first noticed it when Jim Comey said that no reasonable prosecutor would charge Hillary Clinton. I thought that was absolutely astounding, because there seemed to be it almost is as if he was reading off an indictment, and then he said no reasonable prosecutor would charge that. That had agents' jaws on the ground. And then we went right into the Russia collusion hoax. All of it just seemed very alarming to me. But again, I was down in the Miami division. I continued to work my violent crime cases, and I tried to just ignore it. But it became so overwhelming, Maria. And then when this new administration came in, I worked under the Biden administration for about a year and a half. And the emphasis on January 6th and Capitol violence, I had never seen the FBI so focused on going after misdemeanors. It was absolutely astonishing. I never believe in violence. I believe that those that were actually destructive should be held accountable. But that's not what the FBI was doing. And it seemed to be one politically motivated case after another. And then I was in the Miami division when the raid at Mar-a-Lago occurred. I was not there. I was not even aware that it was going on the day that it occurred. But it just seemed that the FBI was going very hard after Republicans, conservatives, Trump supporters, and at the same time, turning a blind eye to those on the opposite end of the political spectrum. Democrats, liberals, progressives. The FBI did virtually nothing in the summer of 2020. There was virtually no response. But then January 6th happens, and they go full force. And for me, Maria, it was a very personal issue in the end, because my friend was killed. Yes. Executing a search warrant in Sunrise, Florida for a child predator. They did not send SWAT for her. But I watched over and over, they sent SWAT for January 6th misdemeanors, but not for the most violent offenders. And now my friend is dead. So it was a number of factors that I took into consideration to walk away. But I'm telling you, watching it now, this is an exciting time. I am extremely, looking forward to the reforms that are going to happen. But it is going to take time, because this destruction at the FBI did not happen overnight. And the reforms are not going to happen overnight either. But I am confident that under the leadership of Kash Patel, under Bongino and others that they will bring on, that the FBI will be made great again. The trust of the FBI is at an all-time low, understandably, but I do believe that trust is going to come back.
Well, right now they're doing cuts. I mean, the DOGE agency is looking to cut waste at the FBI. They're looking at streamlining operations, restoring trust in the Bureau. And supporters say it's smart to eliminate the politicization and ensure taxpayer dollars are being spent well. What do you think should be cut? I mean, you have experience there. Where is the waste?
So again, my previous background prior to joining the FBI, I actually worked at Merrill Lynch. I worked at a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. I worked in the private sector. And when I came to the FBI to serve our country as a result of 9/11, I was astonished to see how much waste was going on. And I just remember looking around thinking this would never fly in the private sector. It just wouldn't. I was surprised that it seemed at times that about 20% of the agents were doing 90% of the work. And I thought, what is everyone else here doing? And how are they collecting a paycheck when there are many individuals not doing much at all? I found that quite alarming. The other thing is that, to run the government like a private sector business is a big ask, right? That's a big ask. But I think that there are steps that can be made. I think that taking a lot of the bodies out of headquarters and putting them back into the fields and working cases, that's what Americans want. Working investigations is what Americans want. They want to be made safe. Those at headquarters that are pushing papers, signing off on documents, and just administrative, there is a need at headquarters, but I think it's a little top heavy at this point. So I would think that they're going to eliminate a lot of that. There's things called 18-month TDYs, Maria, where agents go up to headquarters for 18 months, and it costs the agency quite a bit of money. I don't see the exact benefit of that, and I think that's a way that they can cut costs as well. I think that there's a lot of changes.
The headquarters, Nicole? What about moving the headquarters out of Washington? I mean, that issue was presented to President Trump at one point, and he said, no, they have to be close. But, moving them to outside of Washington could really, take the politics out of everything.
And again, I agree with you on that. Right now, there definitely needs to be a presence at headquarters. I think, trimming down headquarters in D.C. is a very wise move. But there is a presence of our headquarters in Alabama. And so that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, but they are decentralizing that. But when they're talking about getting a new building at headquarters in D.C. and or Maryland, I'm sorry, but I don't think that's necessary at all. I don't think that's a wise use of taxpayer dollars. In fact, I think that you should be sending more agents into the field, and instead of building up headquarters, I would probably be trimming it down.
Okay. Well, thanks for your expertise as always, Nicole. Great to see you. Nicole Parker here this morning, a former FBI